You're listening to AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. This is The Gailey Show. I am your host, JP Derapagosian. We are the show that celebrates LGBTQ culture and entertainment in Minnesota and beyond. And our guest today was in Minnesota and is now beyond and lives in Hawaii. The author of the new amazing novel, I'm holding it up for folks who are watching on YouTube, of Leap, a memoir by Brent Love. Brent, welcome to The Gailey Show.
Thanks, JP. I am super thrilled to be here and so excited to be talking to you.
Absolutely. So tell us, what is your memoir about?
Oh gosh, it's about a lot of things, but I'll tell you the story is me coming out 3 days before I left for Peace Corps in Armenia. And so I came out in a small Texas town. I had what I feared would be a kind of terrible reaction, and it was hard. And so I had, a pretty difficult reaction when I came out, and then left for Peace Corps and had a pretty unconventional coming out experience in that I lived in Armenia and I was kind of coming out and trying to fulfill this dream of being in Peace Corps. I didn't plan for those things to happen at the same time, but it sure made for a great story, obviously. And it's out and people are reading it and people can buy it now at their favorite bookstore. And I'm super, super excited for people to come out with me, but also to get to, go to Armenia and have that experience, because more people need to either travel there or at least travel vicariously, right? That's what books are about.
Right. Yes. And for folks who know, I am Armenian American. And so I can tell you also, as the founder of the Queer Armenian Library, for listeners who don't know that, I can tell you that this is a literal first of its kind book. No one has written a book like this and has described the journey. And you had an amazing, journey, which is why I am curious then, because all of these things happen. I have got to read some advanced chapters. Thank you very much. But there's a lot that happens to you. So why did you? And a lot of it is very personal. I mean, your coming out story is very personal, and there are ups and there are downs to it. So what made you want to put it down in writing and to share it as a book?
Gosh, I wrote this book for 4.5 years. So it kind of depends on when you asked me during the 4.5 years why I was writing it. And some of the time it was just because I just couldn't quit. I'd gotten too far. But ultimately, I sat down to write it. I've loved queer stories. Obviously, coming out, they've been such a huge life raft for me. Often, I grew up in a small town in Texas. Wasn't around gay people who are certainly out. And I remember the first queer stories I saw on TV, the Will and Grace, the Ellen, like all of that stuff was happening. And as we look back at those stories and maybe we critique them or maybe we don't, they were so important to me. And I also was a library kid, and I got to go to the library alone, and this is before the internet and before the kind of book wars that we're having kind of culturally right now. And so I was just sitting in there, and I remember reading my favorite book series, His Dark Materials, The Golden Compass, which people will know, right? And I remember reading in the final book there, the gay angels, and it just blew my mind. And so as I was kind of having this internal struggle, it was so important to me to have those stories. And now I had a story that I felt was compelling. There were things that readers could learn about what it was like to come out in that way. And I wanted to add to that. I wanted to add to that kind of library of queer work. And then as I wrote it, what I found was there were a lot of folks with conservative backgrounds, both queer people who are coming out, but I've talked to a lot of parents because there's a lot about my parents in the book and about that journey with them, which was very difficult. And we have a very close relationship now. And so people who are in that boat now are reaching out to me and saying, hey, I want to read your book. I want to see what it was like to come out, knowing where you're at now with your parents. What was it like then? And so that's been really important. And if I can share one more reason, it's that, is that I've always wanted to write a book. And as I was living out that experience, and it was really difficult, one of the drivers to me living through that experience, kind of a survival piece for me was like, this is extremely hard. And I'm going to tell people what happened when I get out of here, when I get through the situation, and hopefully it ends well, but whatever the ending is, I'm going to tell people, what happened. And so it's a little bit of fulfilling a promise to myself, to write this book and to share the story.
Yeah. And I guess you literally are one of a kind that we, as far as I'm aware, no American has, come out and gone and spent 2 years in, Armenia, and you traveled throughout the country exploring both who you were as a person, your relationship to your family, but you were also staying with a number of host families as part of your Peace Corps assignment. So I am kind of curious, now, what did you learn about family? Because over this time period, you were dealing with your family, you're staying with these host families. So, what is your sensibility of what a family is or should be?
Well, that's such a big question. There's so many families that I lived with in Armenia, and one of the, Armenia is for kind of culturally and kind of popular thought is that Armenia isn't a very welcoming place to LGBTQ people, and there are certainly people who are people who live in Armenia who would share their own stories about that. I was nervous, so I didn't really come out to those families while I lived with them, and at the same time, I received so much warmth and hospitality and care, and real care. There's a part in the book where before I learned Armenian, where my family was just teaching me like their own, with the care they give to their own kids, right?
Yeah.
And they're teaching me words, and I was able to kind of realize through that experience how much they were rooting for me and how that much they were on my team, and they didn't care whether I got the words right or wrong. They just were rooting for me to enjoy this experience and to learn from them and to really bond with them. They were interested in that kind of relationship with me, which was so buoying at the time because I had gone through this kind of difficult experience with my family right before I arrived. And then, one of the things, if I can share a story that's not in the book because it happens well after the book, is that I did return to Armenia. At the time I wasn't able to come out to my family that I lived with. But when I was able to go back, they had gotten on Facebook. They weren't on Facebook when I lived with them. The internet, is getting to every corner of the earth, right? And so they were on Facebook and they saw pictures of my wedding and they saw pictures of my family, and they just extended such warmth and love, and that experience of family and the love that we shared with each other was just so much beyond these popular narratives about the way Armenians might respond to me as a queer person, as a queer American, and how I might respond to them and their beliefs. And all of that was just washed away by an actual real connection with real humans. We just shared the things that are important to us on the most basic and simple levels, like food and games and holidays, all of that. We had all those memories. And so when I came out to them, they were like, oh, well, literally my friend who, the mom of the family that I lived with, said, "You're our brother, you're happy, we're happy. That's it." And, why had I expected anything less? I shouldn't have.
Yeah. Well, we have just about a minute left here. So first of all, how can folks order your book?
They can go to heybrentlove.com. I've got a list of all your favorite bookstores where it's where you can order it. Of course, you can get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. And I encourage everyone to go to their local bookstore and ask for a copy. Your local bookstore can order it. It's helpful for me. It's helpful for your bookstore. So go do that as well.
And how can people connect with you on social media?
Go to @HeyBrentLove, primarily on Instagram. I love talking to readers, so DM me, message me in the comments. It's been a lot of fun talking to people who've already got to read the book.
Well, we're going to continue this conversation on our YouTube channel and everywhere that you get your podcasts. So follow us there, watch us there. For right now, Brent, thank you for being on The Gailey Show.
So happy to be here.
And then we will continue that conversation. I am curious about the advice you would give to folks who are looking to come out to their family. And I think that we think of coming out as, you know, that kind of 16 to 22-year-old. But I'm wondering, like, do you think of it as of coming out? Well, no, yeah. What would your advice be to somebody who is coming out, regardless of age right now?
You know, my first, it's a bit hard because I came out in a place that I was scared to come out because, you know, I didn't have resources around me. If it didn't go well, I didn't know what would happen. And of course, my family, looking back, I know now they would have taken care of me in ways that I didn't expect, but I was just scared. So my first piece of advice is to make sure that you have a resource that you can connect to before you come out, especially if you're a kid and you live at home and you're dependent on your parents. The thing that helped me retain a relationship with my family and eventually build back to a really robust and beautiful relationship with my parents is that I paid attention a lot to actions over words. You know, the place that I grew up, there was just this standard narrative around a religious perspective of right and wrong. And so when I came out, what I heard was a lot of the things that I was afraid but expected to hear that I could have written down myself, right? And it was just kind of these tropey things. I mean, I don't want to call them tropey because they were my parents' real experience, you know, and they should describe their own words, but they were things I wasn't surprised to hear, unfortunately. But their actions were so much different than the words they shared. And their actions really came from the place of wanting to connect with me and wanting to build a life through this transition into me coming out. And so I'd say that idiom, actions speak louder than words, was huge for me when I came out because, you know, things like, spoiler, my mother comes to Armenia, and that's in the book. And I reflect in the book even that she would not have done that. It was a hard experience, but she would not have done that if she didn't want a relationship with me, if she didn't care for me. And so that spoke a lot without actually the words, you know, that might have backed that up. And it was really helpful to pay attention.
Unpack that a little bit more for me, because I think there are a lot of folks who may be going through this where the family isn't necessarily welcoming, but they're not necessarily unwelcoming. So were you saying that you were getting negative words, if you will, like there were like either however that was coming out, but then like positive actions?
Yeah.
First of all, that's
so I mean, my book starts on the night of coming out, and so if you want to know what the negative words are, they're recorded in history. You know, thank you, Mom and Dad, for letting me just go there in this book. The actions, though, you know, I received a care package that really spoke to a lot of our favorite memories and the things that they knew about me that I personally loved. Right. There are moments that you'll read about in the book where, you know, I reaching out to my mom at different points in which I need advice, and she's still there in all the ways that she always was. The trip that she does take to Armenia is deeply profound for both of us in a couple of different ways. And that happens, you know, where we get to share things. We dance together. We dance the Kochari together, right? Like, it's so cool to be able to share all those things with her and for her to have that experience, both because it was profound for her, but also just because she loved me and wanted to see the world the way I saw it. And so I was paying attention to those things when she did them, and I was journaling about them. I was writing them down. I was experiencing gratitude for them at the same time as, you know, words came out that hurt. And paying attention and being grateful for the actions helped me not totally just sink down into sadness when I was spoken to in ways that were hard.
Yeah. What advice would you have for the family members of a queer family member who's just come out? Like, what is the advice you have for those family members about how they should go about affirming their queer child or their queer sibling?
Sure. Well, I am going to say, I mean, my book is not a how-to, but one of the things that one of the things that I think that's good about parents reading my book is that it really is like if you're wondering what's happening to your kid after they came out and you said something terrible to them, this is an example of what happened and what I was trying to do and what was on my mind and the experiences I was having. And I'm hearing from parents that that's really a useful thing for them to be able to see and kind of look behind the curtain in a place that they're a little bit afraid to look. So I'd say, look at these queer stories that, number one, engage in them, especially if your kid loves them. If your kid is reading a book or watching a TV show, just get into them. It doesn't mean you have to agree with everything. It doesn't mean you have to sign on to all the values and beliefs that you see, but get curious, try to understand them, try to understand their perspective. And the other thing is, oh man, just find the parts of your relationship you can attack with unabashed love, whatever it is, as small, as granular as it is. If it's getting them their very favorite coffee and just dropping it off at their work, like all those little things, they matter. And your kids and your loved ones, your nieces and nephews, they're paying attention to what you do. And oh my gosh, it matters to them. I got goosebumps from like all of these memories I have of people doing that for me. And all that fear doesn't go away overnight, but man, does it just kind of, those things are like a balm, and it just soothes those wounds over and over again until your kids are more brave and they can just be themselves.
Important advice. Yeah. Important advice. The book is called Leap, and you did one of the most terrifying things that I would, which is bungee jumping, which if I'm ever having to do that, I better be dead, because it terrifies me. Like, even just sitting here on firm ground, I'm like, why? So why did you want to, well, A, why did you want to bungee jump? And two, why did you think that that was the best metaphor to use for your memoir? Because it's very compelling. Leap. It's exactly what you did.
You know, I've thought about that a lot, obviously. 4.5 years of writing this book. And the thing that is, the reason, I wrote it and I tried it out when you've drafted a lot of work yourself. Like, you write this draft and you're like, I'm going to try this out. It's kind of weird. Let's see if this metaphor works. And the reason I stuck with it is because I really believe that anyone, like, we all kind of come out in some way or another in our lifetime. We as queer people, we get to like talk about that and show people how it works, because oftentimes we just have to do it. But everybody, and to be true to themselves, whether they want to be a certain kind of professional, they want to be a certain kind of artist, maybe they are queer, or maybe they want to do something that their family doesn't expect of them. We all have to kind of come out. We have to take this leap. And it is terrifying. And there are moments when you kind of take that leap to come out that you realize you can't go back to. You can't get back on the ledge you just jumped off of. Gravity is happening now. You can't go back. And the other thing is, there's also a time in there in which you just don't know how it's going to work out. You have an idea. You've been told how it's going to work out. You're trusting some people that they tied the things correctly or whatever, but like, you just don't know. And for this book, when I was joining Peace Corps, I just didn't know how it was going to work out. And so I think that's true for everybody. And you've got to just face the facts that, one, you're not going to be able to go back. And two, you're just going to have to ride it for a while when you don't know how it's going to work out. And it can be terrifying. But, oh man, that is also how we grow and how we experience, these joys in life that we really want to experience.
I like the metaphor of bungee jumping, and like, if there are other things you can do, but even right now thinking about it, I get goosebumps. Yeah. Well, jumping.
The other thing that I didn't know, which is, in that first chapter, is that when you bungee jump, the thing stretches you out, right? And then like the rubber band of it all is like stretching out, but then it pulls you back up nearly as high as when you dropped the first time. And you just kind of do this like bouncing thing over and over again. And, and what that, does in terms of the metaphor is that like, you leap, right? You come out, but actually you just you keep having to do it over and over again. You keep taking these leaps further and further into the person that you want to become. And it can be a kind of a similar experience every time, but that's just, what it's like.
It definitely works. It was a very visceral thrill to read you jumping, and then also the way that you keep coming back to it and demonstrating that, because it is, there is that realization, I think, for queer people, is that you come out And then you realize, oh my God, I'm going to be coming out for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It's just whether it's a little coming out or if it's a big coming out, like it's just a continuous, constant, thing. And so I think once you begin to learn the foundations of that and how to keep yourself safe when you need to be safe and learning when that, needs to be, but then also being able to relish in the details of being able to come out and how you want to come out is really important. And you really walk us through a journey here. And I'm just so thrilled that you did commit to writing it down, because I think it's going to be very important, not just for folks who are wanting to come out, folks who are exploring their families, folks who are traveling to Armenia. And I think a lot of, queer Armenians who are living, in the country right now of understanding, their own country in a much different way. So thank you for committing to that 4.5-year journey.
Yeah. All those, other people's stories have done exactly the same thing for me and helped build my imagination for what's possible for me in my own life. And it's it's a gift to be able to do that kind of work and put it out there for people to read and build their own imagination for what's possible. Yes.
Well, so the conversation for right now, for you and I, we're kind of wrapping up, but where I'm going with that is that let me make sure I'm getting the date correctly. On June 22nd, Brent is going to be doing a special reading and a further Q&A from me. You can follow us at the International Armenian Literary Alliance. You can go there, armenianliterary.org, and register. It's Zoom. It's live. There will be a recording of it, but you all need to be there in person. And we have another conversation that I'll be moderating between two authors, and then Brent is our special guest who will do a reading and take some Q&A. So if you want to hear more about the book, June 22nd, that'll be 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. We'll include links on how to register on our website and the show notes, but you can also go to armenianliterary.org. Are you going to be doing readings or other events that folks can go to?
Yeah, so you can go to heybrentlove.com/events, and that's where a number of digital and in-person events. I will say, since I know a lot of folks are in Minnesota, I'll be in Minnesota July 22nd at Majors and Quinn to do a reading there. And so I'd love to sign your book and to meet Minnesotans. I've got obviously a number of friends after having lived in Minnesota for over a decade, so I'm very excited about that event.
Yes. Well, you're still a local author in my book. So
yeah, I mean, I will be there, and I will be holding my stack of books for folks. And I can't wait to kind of go back and be among my Minnesotan people.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Brent, for being here today on The Gailey Show.
I've had such a great time, and I'm so thankful for what you guys are all doing, and the listeners who are listening and taking the things they hear about the art and books and spreading them out in their own communities. It's really powerful to listen to, watch, read queer stories, and I'm so glad that everybody's here doing just that.
Definitely. Well, thank you. Well, that is our show for today. Thanks everyone for listening and or watching. Our podcasts are executive produced by Jim Pounds. Creative and accounting support provided by Gordy Erickson. Production, distribution, and marketing support provided by Brett Johnson, Chad Larson, Laura Headland, and Jennifer Ogren from AM 950. You can find us on social media. Search for This Queer Book Saved My Life on Facebook. We're at This Queer Book on Instagram and at _Gailey Show. Follow us on Instagram for preview clips from upcoming episodes. For The Gailey Show, check out our YouTube channel, unless you're watching us there right now. We're also on AM 950's YouTube channel and Facebook page. As always, you can connect with us through our website, thisqueerbook.com. On our website, you can leave me a voice message of the current LGBTQ books, film, or TV you're loving right now. And if you send me a message, I will play it on the air to share with our community. Go to our homepage, thisqueerbook.com, scroll down, and you will see an orange box with a microphone. Click it and share your message of what queer media you're loving to watch or read. And if you have LGBTQ entertainment news with a Minnesota angle, email gaileyshow@thisqueerbook.com. That's GAILY show@thisqueerbook.com. And until our next episode, see you queers and allies in the bookstores.